Sure, here's the revised version of your story with the same length and character count. You are about to hear how a human daughter shocked the aliens in ways no one could have predicted. In the vast star-studded expanse of the universe, the Zorro species stood renowned for their conquests and strategic prowess. Their technology was advanced, their warriors elite. Yet, there existed tales of planets that defied even the mightiest of conquerors, whispered in the dark recesses of interstellar academies. One such tale that caught the imagination of many young Zorro students was that of an Earth-like farming planet, a verdant world that had unexpectedly repelled their forebears. The story begins in a grand lecture hall of the Zorro Central Academy, where a group of bright-eyed students gathered around Professor Galar, a veteran of many battles and now an esteemed historian. The walls of the hall were adorned with holograms of galaxies and pulsating stars, setting the stage for a lesson unlike any other. Laura, a human girl with a curious mind, sat among the Zorro students, feeling both excited and nervous. She was the first human to ever be accepted into the prestigious Zorro Central Academy, thanks to her father's work in intergalactic diplomacy. Laura was determined to prove herself, but she had no idea what lay ahead. As the lesson continued, Laura's attention drifted to the strange behavior she had observed since her arrival. Whispers among the students, secretive glances, and attention that seemed to simmer beneath the surface. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. After class, Laura approached Professor Galar. "Professor, have there been any unusual events on campus recently?" she asked, trying to sound casual. Galar's eyes flickered with curiosity. "Unusual in what way, Miss Laura?" "Well, I've noticed some odd behavior among the students, and there are rumors about strange occurrences in the lower levels of the academy." Galar's expression turned serious. "Rumors are common in a place like this, but I advise you to focus on your studies. Leave the mysteries to those whose duty it is to uncover them." Laura nodded, but her curiosity was far from satisfied. That evening, she decided to explore the academy's lower levels, a place she had heard whispers about since her arrival. The corridors were dimly lit, and the air grew colder as she descended. In a secluded corner, she discovered a hidden door, partially concealed behind a tapestry. Her heart raced as she pushed it open, revealing a staircase that led even deeper underground. She hesitated, considering the risks, but her curiosity won out. As Laura descended, she found herself in a vast underground chamber filled with advanced technology. Strange devices hummed with energy, and she could see alien symbols glowing on the walls. Her eyes widened as she realized she had stumbled upon something significant. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a Zorro student, his eyes wide with fear. "What are you doing here?" he hissed. "I could ask you the same thing," Laura replied, her voice steady. "What is this place?" The student glanced around nervously. "You shouldn't be here. This is dangerous." Laura took a step closer. "If it's dangerous, then I need to know why. What's going on here?" The student sighed, realizing he had no choice but to explain. "There's a group within the academy, a rogue faction. They've been planning something big, something that could put everyone at risk." Laura's mind raced. "We need to stop them. Can you show me where they are?" The student hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." They navigated through the labyrinth of corridors, finally arriving at a large chamber where several Zorro students were gathered around a holographic display. Laura's breath caught in her throat as she realized the scope of the conspiracy. "This is bigger than I thought," she whispered. "We need to act fast." The student looked at her with a mix of hope and fear. "What do we do?" Laura's eyes hardened with determination. "We find proof and expose them. The academy needs to know the truth." As they began to devise a plan, Laura knew she was stepping into dangerous territory, but she also knew that she couldn't back down. The fate of the academy and possibly more rested on her shoulders. Laura and the Zorro student, who introduced himself as Zev, quickly formulated a plan. They needed evidence of the rogue faction's activities, and they needed it fast. The two unlikely allies crept closer to the group gathered around the holographic display, careful to stay hidden in the shadows. "We need to get closer," Zev whispered. "If we can record their conversation, it could be the proof we need." Laura nodded, her heart pounding in her chest. She activated her wrist communicator's recording function, silently hoping it would capture the audio clearly enough. They edged nearer, straining to hear the conversation. "We move at dawn," one of the rogue faction leaders said. The Academy's defenses will be down for maintenance. That's when we strike. Another member responded. And what about the new human student? She's been asking questions. She's no threat, the leader scoffed. We'll deal with her if necessary. Laura's blood ran cold. She and Zev exchanged a tense glance. They had enough to confirm the rogue faction's intentions, but they needed more concrete proof. Let's get out of here, Laura whispered, motioning for Zev to follow her. They retraced their steps, careful to avoid detection. Back in the relative safety of an empty classroom, Laura played back the recording. It was clear enough to reveal the rogue faction's plan. Zev sighed in relief. This is good. We can take this to the authorities. Laura shook her head. Not yet. We need to catch them in the act. If we go to the authorities now, they might not believe us. Or worse, the faction might have allies who could cover this up. Zev frowned but nodded. You're right. We need to be sure. They decided to gather more information. Over the next few hours, Laura kept her eyes and ears open, noting any suspicious behavior among the students. She noticed that several members of the faction seemed to be communicating secretly, using coded messages on their wrist communicators. We need to decode those messages, Laura said. There might be more details about their plan. Zev led her to a friend who specialized in technology. Tessa was a Zorro student known for her hacking skills. After hearing their story, she agreed to help. I'll need a sample of their coded messages, Tessa said, her fingers already flying over her device's holographic keyboard. Laura and Zev managed to intercept a few messages, which Tessa quickly decrypted. They're coordinating their attack points, Tessa said, her eyes wide with alarm. This is worse than we thought. They're planning to disable the Academy's main power grid and take over the control room. Laura clenched her fists. We need to stop them. With the attack planned for dawn, time was running out. Laura, Zev, and Tessa devised a counter-plan. They would alert the Academy's security forces just before the attack, ensuring they would be ready to intercept the rogue faction. The night seemed to drag on forever. Laura couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in her stomach. She knew they were risking everything, but she also knew they had no choice. The future of the Academy depended on their actions. As dawn approached, Laura, Zev, and Tessa took their positions near the main power grid. They had alerted a few trusted security officers who were now lying in wait. The air was thick with tension as the minutes ticked by. Finally, they saw movement. The rogue faction members crept toward the power grid, unaware of the trap that had been set for them. Laura's heart pounded as she gave the signal. The security officers sprang into action, quickly subduing the conspirators. Shouts and scuffles filled the air as the rogue faction members were apprehended. Laura watched as the leaders were dragged away, their plans foiled. Relief washed over her, but she knew it wasn't over yet. They still had to ensure the Academy's safety. As the sun rose, casting a golden glow over the campus, Laura and her friends stood together, exhausted but triumphant. They had prevented a disaster, but Laura couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover. We did it, Zev said, a tired smile on his face. Laura nodded. Yes, but we need to stay vigilant. There might be more factions out there, and we can't let our guard down. Tessa agreed. We'll keep an eye out for any suspicious activity. And Laura, you should be proud. You saved the Academy. Laura smiled, feeling a sense of pride and determination. She had found her place at the Zorro Central Academy, and she was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The rogue faction had been stopped, but the Zorro Central Academy was still buzzing with the aftershocks of the near disaster. Security was tightened, and an investigation was launched to uncover the full extent of the conspiracy. Laura, Zev, and Tessa were hailed as heroes, but their ordeal was far from over. Laura found herself in front of a panel of Academy leaders, recounting the events of the previous night. Professor Galar and other high-ranking officials listened intently, their expressions a mix of concern and admiration. You showed great courage and resourcefulness, Miss Laura Galar said, his voice filled with respect. But we must understand the full scope of this threat. Can you tell us more about what you discovered? Laura took a deep breath and explained everything, from the hidden door and the underground chamber to the decoded messages and the final confrontation. The leaders exchanged worried glances as they absorbed her words. We will continue the investigation, Galar said finally, and we will take every measure to ensure the safety of our academy. You and your friends have done a great service. After the meeting, Laura met Zev and Tessa in the library. They had become inseparable allies, bound together by the danger they had faced. "I can't believe we actually did it," Zev said, shaking his head. "But I have a feeling this isn't over." Tessa nodded. "I've been looking into the data we recovered. There are some encrypted files we haven't cracked yet. They might hold more clues about the faction's plans." Laura felt a familiar determination rising within her. "Let's get to work then. We need to know everything." For the next few days, they pored over the data, working tirelessly to decrypt the remaining files. The more they uncovered, the more they realized how deep the conspiracy ran. The rogue faction had connections within the Academy and beyond, and their ultimate goal was far more sinister than they had imagined. One evening, as Laura was sifting through the latest batch of decrypted files, she stumbled upon a shocking revelation. "Look at this," she said, pointing to her screen. "There are references to a secret project called Eclipse. It's mentioned in several communications between faction members." Zev leaned in, his eyes narrowing. "Eclipse? What is it?" Tessa's fingers flew over her keyboard. "I'm pulling up everything I can find on Eclipse. If it's important to the faction, it could be the key to understanding their true intentions." As the information poured in, a chilling picture began to form. Project Eclipse was an experimental weapon program designed to harness the power of a rare energy source. If completed, it could give the faction unimaginable power, enough to threaten the entire galaxy. "We need to stop this," Laura said, her voice firm. "If they get their hands on Eclipse, everything we've done will be for nothing." Zev nodded. "But how? We don't even know where this project is being developed." Tessa's eyes lit up with determination. "I might have an idea. According to these files, there's a facility on the outskirts of the Academy grounds. It matches the descriptions of the labs where Eclipse is being developed." Laura's heart raced. "Then that's where we need to go. We have to find this facility and shut it down." The trio prepared for their mission, knowing the risks were higher than ever. They gathered supplies and planned their approach, each of them determined to see this through to the end. As night fell, they slipped out of the Academy, moving swiftly and silently through the shadows. The hidden facility was well guarded, but Laura's team had become adept at evading detection. They navigated through the perimeter defenses and finally reached the entrance. Inside, the facility was a maze of corridors and labs, filled with advanced technology and alien artifacts. They moved cautiously, aware that any misstep could alert the guards. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the central lab. Laura's breath caught in her throat as she saw the massive device at the heart of the room. It pulsed with a strange, eerie light, and she knew without a doubt that this was Project Eclipse. "We need to disable it," Laura whispered, her eyes scanning the room for any clues. Tessa nodded, already working on hacking into the control systems. "I'll shut it down. Just give me a few minutes." But before she could finish, an alarm blared, and the room was flooded with red light. Guards burst in, weapons at the ready. "We've been found out," Zev said, his voice tense. "Get ready to fight." Laura's heart pounded as she faced the incoming threat. They had come too far to fail now. With a steely resolve, she prepared to defend her friends and stop the rogue faction once and for all. Laura, Zev, and Tessa stood back to back, facing the heavily armed guards who stormed into the lab. The air crackled with tension as the guards raised their weapons. Laura's mind raced, searching for a way to buy Tessa more time to shut down Project Eclipse. "We need to hold them off," Laura whispered, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her insides. Zev nodded, gripping his weapon tightly.